Out of the big bad villains in She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, Shadow Weaver is probably the most dynamic. Unlike other baddies in the series, Shadow Weaver has a fascinating duality that culminates in arguably one of the biggest redemption arcs of the entire series. I'm Whitney Van Laningham, and this is Shadow Weaver's History and Symbolism Explained. Instead of asking Nerdwire fans to donate to our Patreon, I want to encourage you to make a donation to Black Lives Matter or any other Black organization. It would be a waste of this platform not to advocate for the Black community, and I hope that you'll join us in giving what you can. Any support you can give will go a long way. No act of empathy is too small. Thanks in advance for your donations and your time. Stay safe out there. Okay, before we dive into the Shadow Weaver we fear and love today, let's talk about her history. Shadow Weaver first appeared in the 1985 series She-Ra, Princess of Power. Her real name was never specified on the show, and she chose her name when she joined the Horde. While the new S-Dubs has kind of a black and red Jafar thing going on with her outfit, and gorgeous Herbal Essence commercial hair, the OG Shadow Weaver was completely cloaked in a long red witchy dress, complete with a neck cowl and a pointed hood. While her robes are a lot more form-fitting than the modern Shadow Weaver's more tactical digs, I think that I like the update more. I feel like we get more personality from the flowy animation of the bottom of her dress as it turns into shadowy tentacles. Unlike the 80s version, the new Shadow Weaver hides her disfigured face behind a mask, symbolizing her duality. But we'll get to that later on. In the 85 series, Shadow Weaver was training with Castaspella under a powerful Etherean sorcerer named Norwin. But when Hordak showed up, he seduced her with the promise of unimaginable power in exchange for information against her planet. After betraying the Etherean Council of the Kings, Hordak awarded her with a dark power gem that would boost her from a second-rate sorceress into an immensely powerful wielder of magic. When Norwin discovered her betrayal, he destroyed the gem when she was only at like a 75% charge. This made her go all evil, and she joined the Horde forever as Norwin's sworn mortal enemy. Although Shadow Weaver is technically Hordak's second in command, she's a real shady bee. And I gotta admire her for constantly keeping her hand in the game by trying to overthrow him and take Etheria for herself. Baby girl has a backup plan, and she's kind of a badass for working double time like this. She tries to team up with Skeletor at one point, but obviously he wanted the Horde throne for himself, so it didn't exactly go according to plan. She lives in Horror Hall, which is by far the most metal name for a dwelling space I've ever heard. She could spy on and talk to other worlds via her cauldron, and it's the place where her shadow magic and dark abilities are the strongest. Her familiar is a vulture named Strax, but he and his rad mohawk only appear in like one episode. The Shadow Weaver from the comic series Masters of the Universe is pretty much the same, except in this one her real name is Beatrix, aka Lightspinner. If the name Lightspinner rings a bell, that's because it was Shadow Weaver's name before she went dark mode in the 2018 series. But strap in y'all, because this Shadow Weaver has a way more involved story than her predecessor. The modern SW used to be a powerful sorceress named Lightspinner. Unlike the unnamed 80s version, this Lightspinner wasn't a mediocre apprentice. Instead, she's an extremely powerful master and teacher of Mysticor, giving her students kind but realistic advice about their practices. When one of her top students, Micah, reveals that he has crazy powerful untapped abilities, she vows to teach him everything she knows about magic. Although she's kinda pissed that he's better after 2 weeks of training than she was after years of study and discipline. Sorcerers in Etheria weren't as powerful magically as princesses, but Micah and Lightspinner made impressive advances with lesser magic. When the Horde invaded, Lightspinner pleaded with the Council of Sorcerers to allow her to cast the spell of Obtainment, a forbidden dark magic that siphoned magic from the heart of Etheria like a parasite, often severely wounding the caster if not killing them outright. When they forbid her, Lightspinner was like, nah, I'ma do it anyway, and she and Micah begin the spell. When Micah realizes that the spell is super evil, he stops it, disfiguring Lightspinner. She destroys everyone in the Hall of Sorcerers, joins the Horde, is given Scorpius Kingdom's runestone, the Black Garnet, and made Lord Hordak's second in command. The Black Garnet originally belonged to Scorpius' family when they ruled over the land that is now the Fright Zone. Instead of standing up to Hordak, they just handed the gem over to avoid conflict. When she had the Black Garnet, Shadow Weaver spent her time trying to unlock its power and siphoning the energy from it after she attached it to her mask. Her big thing was bragging about how no one had ever achieved what she had with the spell of Obtainment, because she could manipulate light and darkness with her powers. Please, girl, you botched that thing so bad that you have to wear this Jason hockey mask on your face for the rest of your life. And the black garnet only zapped her powers. It was supposed to help her unlock new powers and give her electrokinetic abilities. According to linguistics, garnet comes from the Latin word granatum, which means pomegranate seed. So we can only assume that a black garnet is a naughty, naughty pomegranate. Nah, but seriously, take everything I'm about to tell you about garnets and make it the dark version. The garnet has been long believed to be a protective force against making mistakes, which adds up for Shadow Weaver, who is living in the wake of her failure to complete the spell of obtainment without complications. As a protectant, garnets have also been said to propel the idea of friendship, which is the core strength that the Princesses of Power, the Best Friend Squad, and everyone else in the rebellion draw from when fighting evil. It makes sense that after using the Black Garnet's power, Shadow Weaver begins to redeem herself, but we'll get to that in a minute. After Adora is brought through the portal from Eternia, Shadow Weaver adopted Adora as her own, promising to make her as powerful as Micah. She trains Adora and Catra, another of her gathered soldiers, eventually making Adora the Force Captain of the Fright Zone. But after Adora abandons the Fright Zone to become She-Ra and protect Etheria from the Horde, things start to go downhill for our Sorceress of Shadows. She's weakened and dying, and eventually imprisoned by the new Force Captain Catra. When she summons the last of her magic by connecting with her old Sorcerer's Guild badge, she manages to break free and heads on over to Brightmoon. When she surrenders to the kingdom of Brightmoon and agrees to help them defeat Hordak and Catra in exchange for She-Ra healing her, they imprison Shadow Weaver in a very nice jail cell within the castle. But once again, she's like, must mentor someone, and decides to train Glimmer to hone her teleporting and spellcasting skills. And although it seems like she's still being manipulative and cryptic, Shadow Weaver is actually acting like her old self again. Like, sure, she wants to take down Hordak and Catra on what's definitely an unhealthy level, but she's behaving more like Lightspinner than Shadow Weaver for the first time in a long time. Instead of focusing solely on using Etheria's magic for herself, Shadow Weaver takes her second chance and targets her manipulations towards forcing Glimmer to train with her. Even though Glimmer says no, Shadow Weaver is basically like, I'll literally only help you with that if we can do a magic spell together. And Glimmer agrees because what other option does she have? And although the old Lightspinner would be less shifty, at least she's back to using her desire for power for good instead of evil. When Shadow Weaver tells Adora that she has to be the one to absorb the failsafe and use it to release the power of the Heart of Etheria, this is her final admission that she's been through too much to ever have as much power as she's always wanted. The old Shadow Weaver and even the old Lightspinner would have traded anything for ultimate power. And although Lightspinner wanted to use that all-powerfulness for good, it wasn't 100% altruistic. I mean, who wouldn't want to be the most powerful sorceress, especially after all your hard work in cracking a version of the spell of obtainment that wouldn't immediately kill you? Micah robbed her of the chance to fully succeed with that, and she hasn't been able to let it go for nearly 2 decades. But finally, Shadow Weaver realizes that her mentees really are the future. She did realize that Micah had a much better natural ability at magic than she would ever have, but instead of continuing to mentor him, she made the selfish decision to attempt her spell. I feel like this is kind of like when 30-year-olds try to get on TikTok. Just let the 16-year-olds have it, my dudes! After leaving the Fright Zone and spending time on Brightmoon, I think the sweetness and selflessness of the princesses and the Best Friend Squad started to rub off on her. Although she still used manipulative tactics to coerce them into going along with her training and battle plans, she's ultimately doing more good than harm for Glimmer, Bo, and Adora. Obviously, there's that whole thing where she Dumbledore's Adora and is like, "You're a sacrifice, Harry!" But again, that's her version of her return to wanting to save the whole of Etheria. When she sacrifices herself, she shows her support and pride for Catra for the very first time. And although Catra and Adora were devastated when she died, her sacrifice was the only thing she ever did purely for the good of others without any promise of power in return for herself. There were no tricks she could use this time, and she was ready to admit that she wasn't the most powerful one in the room. She died so that Catra and Adora could lead Brightmoon into the future, stronger than she ever was. It takes a lot of self-reflection to let go of that lifelong greed for power, and I'm proud of the progress this character made over the last 5 seasons. The background for the modern character is a lot more powerful and detailed than the OG, with a kind of character duality that we just didn't see as much of in the original. She's not simply power hungry. She truly believes that she can help Etheria, because the Princess Alliance just isn't helping. Her desire to mentor carried over from her good persona to her evil one, despite the fact that none of the other big bads in the series were all that nurturing. Her instinct to teach and discover was still stronger than her desire for ultimate control and power, although she definitely wanted those things too. Circling back to the mask worn by SW in the modern series, we see it used as the physical representation of her two sides. Behind the mask lies what she perceives to be her greatest failure, messing up the spell of obtainment. But by wearing the mask, she can cover up her mistakes and tell everyone that she made it farther than any other sorcerer. Focusing on the fact that she's still the best sorcerer despite her failings helps justify her hunger for power. When Shadow Weaver finally removes her mask to reveal her face to Catra and Adora one last time before sacrificing herself, it was like her way of coming to terms with the fact that she messed up before, but she can actually do some good now. And as a mother figure to Catra and Adora, she wanted to show them her real face to prove that she had learned from them. I personally think that Shadow Weaver is one of the most interesting characters in the series, but I want to know who you want me to cover for next time. Let me know in the comments who your favorite She-Ra characters are, for the honor of Grayskull!